Ted, what on earth are you doing?
You don't want to get it mixed up with a guy like me, Dave. I'm a loner, a rebel.
Yeah, but Ted, what's your character doing?
I sit with my back against the wall so I can see the door. Interacting with no one. I don't trust them.
Ted, why do you pick these flaws that don't allow your character to interact with the game? Here are 10 D&D character flaws that won't bog down your game. Welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds, by nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and as usual, I'm hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted.
Maybe it's your first time visiting Ted's basement. It's a place where we like to discuss news, views, and homebrews for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. Sometimes we even talk about other role-playing games.
So if you don't want to miss a single video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and attune to that notification bell.
Alright, 10 character flaws that won't bog down your D&D game.
Alright, so there's plenty of flaws that are out there, and if you want to check out the original article that was written by Megan R. Miller, you can check out the article over on our website. Link is going to be down in the description.
Alright, we thought this would be a great place to discuss, this article, and also character flaws in general. And the caveat to all character flaws is they should enhance the roleplay and add to roleplay at the game and synergize with the other players, never detracting and taking away from everybody's fun at the table.
So flaws can be fun to give your character a challenge, something to overcome. It could be something that you wish to grow out of or develop during the game so that you can show, either character growth or, a backslide in the story, because that's what happens in real life. So we try to emulate those kinds of things in role-playing games.
Now, before we jump into the flaws and come up with some great ones that aren't going to be a nightmare or terror in your gaming group, let's talk about the sponsor for this video, Tales of Terror for 5e from Wicked Foundations. It's a Kickstarter. Right now, it's going on. It's really sweet. It's awesome. Basically, it's a monster manual with more like horror and gothic themes to it. But not only that, you have the miniatures to go along with it. So you can just get the book if you want. You can get the PDF, or you can actually get the miniatures, which is, I think, the bulk of it. And these sculpts look fantastic.
Broken down into several different categories. You could get plant-based monsters. You could get the orphanarium. You could get, the toys. All of them have a completely different theme. Each block set that you get the miniatures and the book, or you can totally go all in and get all 3 sets of miniatures. I think they're fantastic. One of the sculpts looks just like a monster that, Dave and I create and use in our home games. So that's definitely the set that I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, if you want to add some horror and creepy themes to your game, you're going to want to check out this Kickstarter. Link will be down below in the description.
All right, so we saw my little, fake character in the beginning there, and, that kind of flaw, not interacting with NPCs, not trusting anyone, detracts because you're not going to do any role-playing. It's hard for that kind of character, especially in a session 1, to actually get started on the adventure. So what flaws are actually not going to be a problem for a game?
So, we're really just taking right from Megan's list, and we're going to kind of put our own spin on it. But one of the top ones she has is smoking habit. And the idea is that, your character has a minor addiction. It's something that's going to come up in the game. It's a little bit detrimental to the character's overall health. You might use this in descriptions if they're a heavy smoker. It may change how you roleplay their voice. If they've been smoking for a lot of years, they might do cool smoke tricks with a pipe.
In game, you got a number of different things that can wind up happening. Yes, you could do like the whole Lord of the Rings thing where you're having smoking contests to see who can do what with the smoke. Fun and enjoyable, but how it becomes a flaw is if it's an actual addiction and you can't get some, or like you go to a city and somebody sells you stuff that's laced with something, or it's harder to acquire. There winds up being a gold cost involved. There winds up being these different side quests that could come of it. This is going to enhance the game and have more fun and not detract away from the actual role playing and the fun.
So next up, Ted, we have Arrogance. Now, this could be a good one, and it could be an overall flaw, or it could be a little more specific than that.
So being arrogant is really just a role-playing choice of like, okay, my character feels superior or is, angry, more often. And that's just going to flavor how you actually do the role-playing. It might influence for sure how the other players or how NPCs interact with you, especially over time, and you build up this reputation. But at the same time, like, it's not going to make a detriment on the game. It's not going to cause the other players to just like, oh God, this again.
Yeah, that is the key, is to making sure that your other players aren't, constantly, feeling annoyed or angry at you, the player, not the character. Now, also, like, it could be an overall arrogance, like a noble who just thinks they're better than everyone. Or maybe, your character believes they're a master swords person and they're the best with the sword, so that's where their arrogance comes through. It could be the same for if they're an archer or archery. It could be any number of things. It could be a craft like smithing or wood carving or even brewing. These can all flavor your character, and you could definitely use them to enhance the role play at the table.
So next up, we have, a flaw is you're a gambler and you have a problem with it. This creates a number of interesting scenarios. First and foremost, if you run out of gold, what are you willing to do with it? Are you willing to, legitimately steal from your allies to either pay your debts or to wind up gambling? This can create a problem at the table, depending upon how drastic you want to go with it. But it also is going to enhance the game in certain ways.
It depends on the players at your table as well. This actually came up in our Saver Dice game, in the Starfinder game. My character didn't initially have a gambling problem, but the DM kind of worked some things into the backstory, so I just ran with it. And it got to the point where we were given some credits, and then I took out a huge loan against us and then gambled it all and got lucky and won because the dice were just with me. But, I was willing to pay the consequences. But then not only that, part of that, the habit of gambling was to kind of like live large. So, one of the first things they did when they began winning is buy like the largest suite that they could possibly buy, for the group. And then like they had to literally like pull him away and drag him away from the tables, and he would have kept going until it was gone. It was gone, essentially, yes.
So again, this is really going to come down to, what kind of players you have, who's at the table, because this one, can be a lot of fun, but it can swing wildly, just like the rolls of the dice.
Yeah, I mean, you could have enemies that are looking for you because you owe them money. This could create opportunities for adventure later on if you get in so far in debt and, the GM uses that as kind of a hook. Well, now you have to do this job for me. Maybe you pull the rest of the party in. But it is a really good idea to know what your group is like and how they're going to respond to it. Are they going to get angry if you gamble away their loot? Or will they roll with it?
What happens if, your luck streak is really high and, you didn't know this because, usually this kind of stuff doesn't happen. But maybe the gambling hall is actually, run by an organization and you won so much that they're going to come after you. Like, winning can be a bad thing too. So...
yeah, you get accused of cheating, all kinds of things. So there's lots of opportunities for more fun there. This next one, I think, can be a lot of fun. Superstition, right? Whether it's just after every time you tell a lie, you have to do a certain thing with your hands, or, if you see something, you throw salt over your shoulder, whatever it may be. A cat walking across your path is bad luck. But, constantly role-playing these could be fun, in moderation.
If you're going with, an occult character, someone who, can really tie heavily into these superstitions, we're playing, these games typically in a world where magic exists and fantastic creatures exist. So feel free to make up your own superstitions and have some fun with it. Like, I don't cross, running rivers, when the moon is high, or, anything along those lines. And it can really create problems. I know we had a player in a game many, many years ago who didn't believe in the gods, didn't want to do anything with it, felt that it was, all a hoax, a problem, what have you. And it created, some utter hilarity in the game. Wind up making the player upset at the table because we thought he was just role-playing, and turns out that he was that anti-religious. But, if you just run with something, you can wind up creating fun stuff. But as Dave says, it always helps to know who the players at your table are. So next up is bad table manners. This is one of those things that, in a long-running campaign, there's usually a time that you're going to sit down with people, for a meal that are, of higher stature. Whether you've been dining with the queen, whether you're dining with nobles, or invited somewhere as a guest that's of an elevated station. This is a perfect time to just be like, oh yeah, I don't use the silverware thing. I pick up my piece of steak or my chicken and bite right into it. Got food dripping all down through my beard, and it's hilarious. And isn't going to detract from the game. It's going to just totally make that moment hilarious.
Yeah, you could totally ham this up from time to time. You wouldn't want to do it every time, but like the first time and in important events, it is kind of cool to do it. Like the idea that the group sits down in a tavern for the first time, the server brings out the bowls and the plates and the silverware, and your character pockets the silverware, and everyone's like, "What?" It's like, that's kind of weird. And then begins eating with their hands, and it becomes a known thing to the rest of the characters. So when you talk about going to this fancy banquet, they're all looking at you going, oh my gosh, what is Ted going to do, or Ted's character going to do? He's going to pick up the soup bowl and drink from it. This is the character that's like, oh, are you done with that? And is reaching on your plate for your food. You can definitely do this. And if you do it sparingly, it can be funny. And then when it's done well, eventually I feel like the other players will start getting in on it and be like, hey, what is so-and-so doing? Because it becomes one of those funny moments at the table.
And it is moments like that will wind up coming up in stories. It might not mean anything to people outside of your group, but it's moments like that are pure role playing, pure hilarious enjoyment that will come up in stories time and time again, and it'll just be awesome to relive those moments.
You can even be a little non-traditional in your bad table manners as well. Like you pick up the drumstick, you take a bite, and then you hold it to your shoulder where your familiar is, and the familiar takes a bite, and you're just like both sharing it. And maybe you and your familiar Lady and the Tramp, the bowl of spaghetti, really weird stuff like that. You're a ranger with a beast companion, and you're sharing right from your plate. You're basically you're eating the spit from the animal, and the animal's eating your spit. Neither of you seem to mind. Like that might even be worse than someone eating with their hands.
So all fun and enjoyable things. So what do we got next?
This one's a good one. This is a real stinker, and that is being stinky. Your character could have bad breath. They're unkept. They have BO. They could work with alchemy supplies, and they always smell like chemicals. They could be an herbalist, so they have a weird funk on them from that. Maybe they were a farmer, and they're just used to being dirty all the time, and it doesn't bother them.
There's so many different characters that, from either background or class choices have you out in nature, whether you're an outlander or a hermit, whether you're a ranger, a barbarian, or a druid. Perhaps washing is not a norm for you. And let's face it, you're in the adventuring lifestyle. You're out doing things where you don't typically get a bath or a shower on a regular basis. So if you don't take the opportunities when they present themselves, you could have that funk, you could have that odor that people don't enjoy. You walk into town and people are like, oh my God, what is that? And you could see what kind of situations that's going to cause.
So, you're a Boy Scout and you've done several like camping trips and stuff where they're like, oh, don't use this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So a wilderness character might be like that too. It might not even be a hygiene thing with them. It could be like, no, that changes your scent and that draws predators or, whatever. Or what if you're a necromancer? What are you going to probably smell?
You're going to smell like death.
You play with dead things all the time. So those are definitely some things you can incorporate. You may not even want to just out and out say it's like for the necromancer per se, you might want to describe some odors and let the players kind of come to their own conclusion, and you just do it every once in a while until they finally like get it and like, oh, you just animated a corpse, oh, that's what I've been smelling.
Or maybe the other characters don't pick up on it because they're gullible.
That could be the case. Or this is a great one to role play and not really talk about so much. I know your character in my campaign, Relian, basically doesn't tell lies and is kind of gullible. So like he just comes right out with whatever he's thinking, and everyone else is looking at him like, why are you saying that? And then it got to the point where it's like, oh, we can't let Relian in on this talk because he's just going to say whatever he's thinking.
As a bookworm type character, is like well, I mean, we're 20 level at this point in time, but like, especially early on, it was one of those things that is like, he didn't really interact with people. He's read so many books and he's seen how things were done, and it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to be the good guy. I'm going to tell it how it is. And, we got into this one position and I was getting ready to go in a direction because we hadn't played in a month or two. And I'm like, I can't say that, guys. This is a problem here. So it's just like, I'm getting ready to spill the beans, so to speak. And our players are like, let me step in and say what's going on. It was quite comical. So like you can really play up, these kinds of things. Gullibility is something that you can have a lot of fun with, especially if you've got another player at the table who's like a fast talker or, really good at, persuasion and deception. You're just going to believe what they say, regardless of what they roll. And you just have a lot of fun with it. And the more that comes out, the more hilarity that can wind up happening, as long as the other player's not being a jerk to you. And they'd be like, oh, they start talking about all these stories in the past about what they did. And like, wow, this is amazing. I'm so happy to be adventuring with you.
Or the gullible, naive character will say something and the fast talker has to step in and go, what he actually meant was.
Well, there's that too.
So next up, we have the character that might be a bit of a busybody, and that is the promiscuous character. Now, this one can be tricky because, one, there might be adult themes that you don't want to deal with at the table. But that being said, like, it doesn't actually have to be dealt with at all. It could just be known that your character is a character that always slinks off late at night. Eventually, it comes out what's going on, but initially the players might not know. They might assume you're just up to shady dealings, but no, you're just out romancing all the time. You just have a lot of bedfellows, and every place that you go, you've left lovers behind, and you like to revisit them, and you don't talk to the party about it. And maybe they need to find you at one point or another, and they do, and they find you in a compromising position with somebody else.
Indeed. Now, as always, whenever you're dealing with these kinds of topics, always be aware of, essentially what the rating of your table is. And this is a good thing to always discuss ahead of time. And, if you want to go with the, when you get to that cutoff point, we just fade to black, and, have that as your guideline, wherever that point is. But being promiscuous, like, this is a fairly common trait with certain character archetypes, and it's a lot of fun. And
bards, he means bards.
You could go with the charismatic sorcerer as well, or warlock, but for the most part, yes, it is bards. But it's something that, again, this is an element that can add to the game when, the noble lady's father is, chasing the adventuring party out of town, or, whether they're sicking, mercenaries against you because you've defiled his son or daughter or whatever have you. It can have, all kinds of crazy consequences. What happens if, somebody that you consider just a conquest, and now they've fallen madly in love with you and are following you around into dangerous situations and won't leave you be. The hangers on can be its own problem as well.
This is a great place to introduce succubuses. And incubuses for sure. And the other thing too is, as a player, you may not want to take a lot of table time, right? And be like, hey, I'm probably going to be flirting with the barmaid or the innkeeper, and you could just say that, like, just assume that this is going to go on while everything else is going on. If you don't want to role play, and if you don't want it going on, and taking away from table time.
Yes, you can always just say off screen, away from the main group, this is what I'm doing. maybe the DM like, all right, make a check, and that's going to determine your success or failure, and you can go from there.
Right. Does the character vanish for the night, or does he end up with a glowing palm print on their face?
Or do they vanish and success or failure? They still don't come back, but it could be because they're hiding a face palm, or they just want to make everyone think they were successful no matter what. So next up we have lazy. Now this is one that isn't typically linked towards the adventuring type, the one who's out walking around in the woods and whatever have you. But, you can definitely make it work when it comes time to do the extra stuff. Like, when we get to camp, I just sit down and, put up my feet. Oh, I really need to relax and what have you. When it comes time to, we're in town and, you guys go do this, you guys go do that. And I'm going to the tavern. What? We're on a mission here. Yeah, I need a drink.
Or, either that or they're always trying to trick the party into thinking they're doing something, but they're not. I know Nerder Doug played a drow that was, I think he was an enchanter or some kind of spellcaster, and the party would go to set up camp, and his character would set up a hammock and, summon his unseen servant to fan him while he's chilling and other players are doing stuff. And they're like, hey, are you going to help? He's like, nah, sun's up. Sorry, I can't help you.
So the lazy character, I think, could be a lot of fun. We all know that, cats are typically lazy, so this could play out really well if you decide to play with a tabaxi.
I also feel like, from the Icewind Dale trilogy, Regis kind of fit this archetype as well pretty easily. He definitely had this flaw.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, halflings are known to be, the homebodies for the most part. So going with a halfling character, you could just be like, well, I'm not meant for this. Like totally going with the Hobbit. We need more meal time, so got to stop and take a break and get something to eat, and getting into that whole culture aspect.
Last but not least, and this is a great one, and that is the nosy busybody character.
The person who's poking in at places that they shouldn't be. This is one that would be an ideal flaw, because they're going to come up with things that they probably shouldn't know about. So this is where you can reveal information. They pick up on side conversations that may or may not be related to quests. You can send them down a lot of false trails because they think they found important information that was just completely and utterly misconstrued. You can have a lot of fun with a character that has this flaw.
And, they may not even be malicious. They may not even be like, I need to know secrets. They just might be a gossip, right? And they just like hearing about things. They want to peek over the fence and see what the neighbors are doing. It could be, in most cases, it's probably innocuous stuff that doesn't even matter. But this character accidentally finds the other stuff a lot of times, or gets the party in trouble because they're poking their nose where they shouldn't. The curiosity killed the cat. So it's that kind of thing.
So, like, I know my kids definitely, fall into this bracket. Like they get, close up on people, and if you got a phone out, they want to see what's on your screen. So, like, you could literally have a character who's a little bit more innocent. You haven't been exposed to the horrors of the world. You haven't lost this innocence. So you still want to, know what's going on. And maybe there's that issue of, you've got, proximity issues, and you get up close to people, and, maybe you're a little bit more, huggy, touchy, feely, and, some people are like, I don't get you. But, you could have a lot of fun and really dive in head first.
Absolutely. So these are 10 flaws that Megan R. Miller came up with over on the website. You can find the article by the same name. What did you think? What are your favorite flaws to put on a character? We have a place where we can discuss that, and that is down in the comments. But before we go, let me invite you to join Nerdarchy, the adventuring party. What can they expect over there, Ted?
Over on Patreon, we're creating products for 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons that both players and DMs alike can drop right into their game.
But that's not all. We do monthly giveaways, and our patrons are automatically entered.
We do weekly hangouts with our patrons and more.
So quest on down to the description. Join the Nerdarchy adventuring party. Until next time,
stay nerdy.